In 1987, a 6-year-old boy disappeared while playing hide-and-seek in a quiet New Jersey neighborhood. There were no screams, no witnesses, no ransom, just a child who never came home. The case stayed open, but everyone stopped asking questions. Until 2023, when a couple knocked down a basement wall in a house on Colonial Court. Behind it, they found bones, a red metal lunchbox, and a sealed roll of undeveloped film. What that film showed reopened everything. Before we start, hit subscribe to help uncover stories they tried to bury and make sure no name stays forgotten. My name's Leah Burnett. I'm 41, born and raised in South Jersey. In June of this past year, my husband Sam and I bought our first home, a 2-story brick place on Colonial Court in Cherry Hill. Nothing fancy, but it had good bones and sat on a quiet street with older trees and a backyard that needed mowing. The kind of place where people still wave when you drive by. We'd been looking for a while, saving up while renting in Camden. This house came on the market after the previous owner passed away, an elderly woman who, according to the paperwork, had lived there since the 80s. Her grandson handled the sale. The home inspection showed nothing major. A few outdated fixtures, a basement that smelled like dust and carpet glue, but no structural concerns and no mention of any serious work being done. What I liked most was that nothing felt touched up. No quick flips, no fresh paint hiding mold, just an honest house that needed updating. The kind of place you could settle into slowly. That summer, Sam and I got to work. We didn't have contractors, we were the contractors. Nights and weekends, we peeled wallpaper, knocked out old shelves, hauled scrap to the curb. The basement was first on our list. Sam wanted to frame out a proper laundry area and maybe put in a little workshop for his tools. I just wanted it to feel clean, dry, not like something was rotting behind the walls. We pulled permits and started demo in early October. The air was heavy that morning, humid, almost sticky, even with the basement windows open. I stood on the stairs with a mug of coffee while Sam chipped away at the back wall near the utility sink. I remember the sound more than anything. The first strike was normal, just plaster cracking. But the second blow echoed hollow like hitting drywall with nothing behind it. Sam stopped, tapped the spot again. He looked over his shoulder and said, "That's not supposed to sound like that." He was right. We'd gone over the floor plan from the county records. There wasn't supposed to be any cavity there, no crawl space, no service panel, just concrete foundation. But the seams looked off, uneven paint, different texture, like someone had patched it quick and walked away. I came closer, set my mug down on the shelf and crouched beside him. Sam ran a gloved hand across the crack. "There's something back here," he said, quiet now. 2 more swings and the wall started to give. White dust clouded the air. I turned my head, coughed into my elbow. Then something tumbled out. A piece of wood hit the floor. Another sound followed, softer. A dry snap like twigs. Sam froze mid-motion. His face went pale. "Leah, don't come any closer." But I did. I stepped forward and looked inside the wall, and that's when I saw it. I didn't know it yet, but we had just opened a room that had been sealed for nearly 4 decades, and our house had been waiting for someone to find what it had been hiding all along. After they pulled the last of the debris from the wall, I sat on the curb across from the house. October wind in my jacket, arms folded tight. Sirens had stopped, but the street hadn't gone back to normal. Yellow tape stretched across the driveway. One of the techs was still taking photos down by the basement door. They didn't let us back inside. They took the bones, the lunchbox, the film canister. Sam and I gave our statements. Then we waited. Detective Dawson was the one who came over to speak with us first. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. Quiet tone, clipped way of talking like someone who's seen more than he says. He asked how long we'd lived there. Sam told him we moved in that June. Bought it through the grandson of the original owner, Evelyn Hall. She'd passed away last year and the house had been vacant for a while. We'd gotten it below market, no real red flags. Nothing in the disclosure except a note about cosmetic updates in the early 90s. The wall we broke open wasn't listed anywhere on the blueprints. The lieutenant paused at that, then asked if we had kids. I shook my head. No, just the two of us. He didn't respond right away, just looked over his shoulder toward the open basement window, then back at me. You said the grandson's name was Ben. I looked at Sam, and he nodded. Yeah. Ben Hall. Came up from Baltimore to sign the papers. That's when Dawson finally said it. In 1987, a boy named Jeremy Hall went missing. He was 6, lived on this street, last seen playing hide and seek. They never found him. No one said anything for a while after that. He left us with his card and told us someone would be in touch once the remains were identified. But I already knew what they were thinking. It was the age, the size, the red lunchbox, the name on the film. Everything pointed back to that boy. That night, the news picked it up. Just a brief segment. Helicopter shot over our street. Headline: Human remains found in Cherry Hill basement. Cold case may be reopened. They didn't say his name yet, but the images stayed on screen long enough for anyone to recognize the address. 10 miles away, in a retirement community in Edgewater, Harold Wexler was watching from a recliner with a cup of tea in his hand. He hadn't worn a badge in years, but he'd been the first detective assigned to the Hall disappearance. He didn't need the sound, just the footage. Same house, same shutters, same slope in the driveway. It hit him like a wave. He'd been there the night it happened. He'd walked that basement. He'd written the report about a strange odor near the southeast wall. Recommended a follow-up. It was never approved. When the phone rang at Cherry Hill PD the next morning, it was Wexler on the line. He gave his old badge number, told them to check the original file, told them to look for his note about the wall. It was never just a missing kid, he said. I knew it then. That summer, July of '87, Jeremy Hall had been playing in his front yard with the neighborhood kids. It was hot, high 90s cicadas screaming in the trees, the kind of heat that makes your shirt stick to your back. He was crouched behind the neighbor's trash cans, hands on the concrete, trying to stay hidden. The game was simple, hide and seek, nothing special. But Jeremy wanted to win. He was the youngest of the bunch, always trying to prove something to his older brother Ben. Their dad had left the year before. Ben, only 13 at the time, had been the one keeping an eye on him most days while their mom worked double shifts at the diner. That day they were supposed to stay on their side of the street. Ben had told him that clear as anything, and Jeremy had listened until someone called his name from the side yard. It wasn't one of the kids. The boy standing near the porch wasn't part of the neighborhood group. Older, 17, maybe 18, gray t-shirt hair slicked like he'd just come out of the shower. He smiled at Jeremy and said, "Ben said I could show you something. Down in the basement." Jeremy hesitated just for a second, but then he stood up. He didn't take the boy's hand, but he followed him, walked past the hose reel, the dead marigolds, through the side door, which was left slightly open. It closed behind him with a soft click. Ben didn't notice he was missing until after 6. He'd been upstairs playing Nintendo with another kid, Trevor, tried to finish a level he'd never beaten. When he looked outside and realized Jeremy hadn't come back, he started asking around. Checked the backyard, the shed, the crawl space, the trash cans. By the time their mom pulled into the driveway at 7:15, Ben was already crying. "He's gone," he told her. "I don't know where he went." She ran door to door, yelling his name, then called the police from the payphone down at the corner station. That was just after 8:00 p.m. The response was fast. Canvassing, flashlights, dogs. By midnight, volunteers were out searching the nearby woods, but there were no signs of a struggle, no broken locks. No one saw anything. The only thing unusual was that faint odor in the basement mildew rot, but no source of it. The house had passed inspection. There was no damage, just silence. After 3 weeks, the case was downgraded. No leads, no suspects. A runaway, they said, though even the chief didn't quite believe it. Jeremy hated the dark. Never wandered far, always came in before the streetlights. But cases go cold, other emergencies pile up, and slowly, his name stopped being spoken. Wexler never let it go. Now, in 2023, the case was back on his desk. At the station, Detective Riley Mercer pulled the original file. Yellowed paper, rusted paper clips, photos curled at the edges. She read Wexler's note dated August 5th, 1987. Unusual odor near southeast basement wall. Recommend structural inspection. It had never been followed up. The forensics team was already working. The bones were being cataloged. They'd found writing on the sole of the shoe. Faded permanent marker. Jeremy H. Mercer sent someone to locate Ben Hall. They found him in Baltimore working a logistics job. He came back the next day. I saw him arrive from across the parking lot. Slouched posture, shoulders pulled in, mid-40s. Same last name as the boy they'd found in my wall. He sat in the interview room for a long time before he said anything. "Are you sure it's him?" he asked. Mercer told him they were waiting on dental confirmation, but the items recovered, the lunchbox, the film, the shoe, all matched what had been listed in the original report. Ben didn't speak for a while. Then he said I was 13. I was supposed to be watching him. He was just hiding, I thought. He looked up, eyes red. We searched everywhere, but not the wall. Mercer asked if he remembered anyone unusual from that day, anyone not from the neighborhood. He nodded slowly. There was one guy, older, hung around a lot that summer. Said he was staying with someone on the next block. I don't remember his name, but he gave me a weird feeling. Later that night, Mercer sat in the evidence lab with the scanned negatives from the film canister. There were 4 photos. The first showed Jeremy smiling cross-legged in a basement corner. The second, same spot, but a blurred teenage boy in a gray shirt entered the frame. The third, Jeremy again, but his face had changed. The smile was gone. He was staring off to the side. The fourth was different. Not a person. Not a child. Just a wall. Half sealed. A hand in the frame smoothing plaster from a bucket. The photo had been taken from inside. Mercer leaned closer. He didn't take that, she said quietly. Someone else did. She didn't know who. Not yet. But now she had a face, a shirt, a hand, and a question that hadn't been asked in decades. Who closed that wall? After reviewing the negatives, I called the lab and asked for a second enhancement on the 4th image, the one showing the wall being sealed. We couldn't lift any fingerprints, but we isolated part of the shirt visible in the frame. Faint block lettering across the chest. 3 letters, STA, possibly part of a team name. Could have been a high school league, a summer program. We ran it through the local archives, nothing immediate. The fabric looked like a generic Team T early 1980s. Cheap cotton gray base. It wasn't much, but it was the first real thread we had. The next morning I met with Leah Burnett. She and her husband had moved out of the house temporarily, staying at a motel near the turnpike. She'd asked to see the photos for herself. I warned her they might be difficult, but she said she needed to. When the images came up on the monitor, she stared for a long time, longer than most people would. Then she leaned forward, squinted at the shirt in the second frame, and said, "I've seen that before." She didn't hesitate when I asked where. My cousin lived a few blocks over, back in the late 80s. Her son had a friend, older kid, maybe 17. Kind of strange. Always wore that same gray shirt with block letters. I think it said Stafford Tigers. Some summer league in Camden, I think. I don't remember his name, but I remember that shirt. I asked if he'd ever been inside the house. She looked down for a moment thinking, then nodded. Yeah. One summer my husband and I helped move a sofa down to the basement. That boy was there. Said he was helping the Hall family with yard work. He held the door for us. She gave me the name a few minutes later. Said it came back to her suddenly. Corey Treadwell. We pulled the old neighborhood roster, and there it was. Corey Allen Treadwell, age 17 in 1987, lived 2 blocks east with an uncle, no arrest record, no court history in Camden County, moved out of state in 1989, no forwarding address. I called state records and asked for everything they had, employment, DMV hits, property ownership, anything. By late afternoon, we had a match. Treadwell was still alive, now 53, living alone in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Owned a property registered to his name off a rural road near Milford. No listed phone number, no digital footprint. Before we moved on him, I needed to understand the full scope. Not just what we'd found in that wall, but what was missed. I started knocking on old doors. Cherry Hill still had most of the same houses, same mailboxes, same people who'd lived there back in the 80s. Some had aged out, some had moved on, but a few, like Marjorie Donnelly, were still around. She opened the door on the third knock. Early 80s now. White hair, pulled back, neat oxygen machine in the corner. Invited me in like she'd been waiting for it. I asked if she remembered Corey Treadwell. She didn't blink. Yes, she said. We all did. When I asked what she meant by we, she listed them without pause. The Donnellys, the Sullivans, the Bergs. That whole side of the block, she said. We knew something wasn't right that summer. According to her, Corey had drifted through the neighborhood after moving in with his uncle. Said the uncle worked long hours for the township's parks department. Corey had no supervision, no guardian paperwork, just showed up. He was polite, she said. Too polite sometimes. Offered to help with yard work, clean gutters, walk dogs, babysit. She paused. But he watched the kids too closely, especially the younger ones. One day, her youngest daughter came inside crying. Said Corey had tried to show her a special room in the basement. Said there was a game. A club for kids who listened. Marjorie told the other parents. They agreed not to let their kids near him. No police report, no official complaint, just a quiet understanding. No one ever warned the Halls, I said. She looked down. We didn't know Jeremy had gone with him. Not until it was too late. After he disappeared, Marjorie visited Danielle Hall, the boy's mother, and told her what they'd suspected. Told her they were sorry. Danielle slapped her across the face. Never spoke to her again. By the end of that week, we'd confirmed the remains in the wall were Jeremy's. Dental records matched. Items recovered from the scene were consistent with what the family had reported missing, right down to the red metal lunchbox. His name was on the shoe, Jeremy H. Clear as day. But there was something else that hadn't been logged in the original evidence. A second opening sealed behind the HVAC ductwork. Forensics located it while scanning for structural anomalies. Inside, they found a few personal objects. A yellow blanket with dinosaur print, a cracked plastic harmonica, a toy sheriff's badge. And in the far corner, etched into the wood near the baseboard, were deep scratch marks. Not random. Words. Let me out. Below it smaller. He said he'd come back. I was good. I stayed quiet. I don't remember how long I stared at that wall before I moved. They also recovered a small cassette recorder, early model, mid-80s, dusty but intact, a single tape inside, labeled by hand, J.H. Promise. Audio was too fragile to play directly, so we sent it to forensics for digitization. We didn't play the recording until the following night. It came through with static at first. Then a voice, small, steady. My name is Jeremy Hall. I'm 6. If you find this, I was here. I waited. I didn't scream. I stayed still. I stayed good. Then silence. Then, he said, if I did everything right, I'd get to leave. He called it the promise. Said I'd graduate. Be part of his collection. That last word changed everything. Collection. I called Wexler that night, told him what we found, asked if he remembered any similar cases, any other kids who vanished like Jeremy. There was a long pause on the line. Then he said, Samantha Leary, 1985, Asbury Park, 7 years old. Last seen at a garage sale. Witness said she was playing with a teenage boy, dark hair, long face. Same description. We searched the neighboring house. There was a basement. It had been sealed over. I asked if they ever identified the boy. No, he said. We didn't have a name. That next morning, I pulled the Leary case file. There it was in her school folder found in her room after she went missing. On the back of her math homework, scribbled in pencil, Project Promise. Same phrase, same pattern. Whatever Jeremy was caught in, he wasn't the only one. I hadn't been back to Cherry Hill in almost 20 years. The place felt smaller now. The roads I used to bike down seemed too narrow. Trees looked taller than I remembered, but maybe I just felt shorter than I used to be. I parked across from the elementary school Jeremy and I both went to. Same brick walls, same wide windows. I sat in the car and stared through the windshield until the engine clicked itself quiet. After the interview with the detective, I didn't know where else to go. I'd told her everything I could remember, which wasn't much. Just that there'd been this older kid hanging around that summer. Said his name was Corey. Claimed he was staying with the Donnellys a few blocks over, or maybe the Sullivans. I couldn't remember which. What I did remember was the voice, the way Corey had asked me that day. Just 5 minutes. I'll bring him right back. And I'd said no, but I'd hesitated. That's what I always go back to. That pause. That's what I see every time I think about it. I never talked about Jeremy much after it happened. Not in high school. Not after Mom moved us away. Not in college when I changed my name on the dorm roster so no one would ask. I built my life on silence. Started over in Baltimore. Took a logistics job that let me disappear inside routine. Moved from apartment to apartment, each one just a little more forgettable than the last. That's what I wanted. To not be the kid whose brother disappeared. To not be the one who was supposed to be watching him. But now, 36 years later, there I was standing outside the police station waiting for someone to say it was all over. The Detective Mercer had shown me the images. Not just the photos from the film roll, but the wall, the scratch marks. The message. I was good. I stayed quiet. And the tape. Hearing his voice again was... It didn't sound like how I remembered. But it was him. That same way he used to speak when he was proud of himself for doing something right. That tone like he was waiting for you to say he did good. He kept his promise. He stayed quiet. He waited. They didn't find everything at first. There was more hidden behind a second crawl space panel near the HVAC duct, another recorder, some drawings, even more of Jeremy's belongings. Mercer said they'd been arranged carefully, almost like someone had been returning to them. A marble, a harmonica, a badge, things he used to carry in his pockets when we'd go down to the corner store. Later that afternoon, I drove past the house. Our old house. The porch still had yellow tape across the railing. A cruiser sat out front, engine idling. The windows were closed. I didn't stop. I just circled the block once, then headed over to the park. The old swings had been replaced. No more gravel, just padded flooring and bright plastic. But the trees were the same. I sat on a bench across from the field and watched the wind pass through them. Back when we were kids, we used to race our bikes there. Jeremy always had to win. And when he didn't, he'd say we had to do it again, because I started before the count. That day he disappeared, we'd been playing hide and seek. It wasn't even supposed to be a big group, just a few of us. But word spread like it always did in summer, and more kids showed up. I'd gone upstairs to play Nintendo with Trevor while Jeremy stayed outside. It wasn't supposed to be long. Just one level. I figured he'd come back in like he always did when it got hot or boring. When I realized it had been too long, I went outside, checked the yard, the trash cans, even the neighbor's shed. Nothing. I called for him until my throat burned. We searched for nearly an hour before Mom even pulled in the driveway. She hadn't even taken her apron off. I remember the way she looked at me like she already knew something was wrong. After the police came, it became a cycle questions flyers door to door. People looked concerned at first, but that faded. The street went quiet again. You could feel it, though, underneath. The tension. Nobody said much, but you could tell they were thinking it. Some folks tried to help. Others just kept their distance. I heard later that a few of the neighbors had suspected something about Corey. He'd been around too often, offered to babysit, gave kids candy. Marjorie Donnelly told Mercer that her daughter once said Corey had tried to get her into a basement. Talked about a special club. She told the other parents. They started keeping their kids inside, but no one told Mom. No one told us. After Jeremy vanished, Marjorie said she went to the house, told Mom everything, said she was sorry. Mom slapped her and never spoke to her again. It wasn't just our family that fell apart after that. I think that street never really recovered. Most folks stayed quiet, moved on, or told themselves it wasn't their place to act. I never blamed them. I blamed myself. That night I sat alone in the motel room, TV on mute. I stared at the grainy stills Mercer had left with me, one frame after another. Jeremy holding a juice box, sitting cross-legged near pink insulation. The shirt he was wearing, I remember it. Mom bought it from a thrift store. It had a tiny tear near the hem. He used to stick his thumb through it. You can almost see it in the picture. In the next photo, you can see someone else standing nearby. Just the lower half of their body. Gray t-shirt. Knee slightly bent. Jeremy's not smiling anymore. And the last image, just a wall being sealed. A hand smoothing plaster. No face, no motion. Just the final act. Mercer told me they were planning to approach the Bucks County property in the next 48 hours. They had a name, a location, a warrant in progress. She said they'd bring him in if he was there, and if he wasn't, they'd find him. The next morning I woke up early and walked back to the park. Fog sat low on the grass. No kids around. I stood near the edge of the field where Jeremy used to dig for worms after rainstorms. I didn't say much, just one sentence repeated 3 times. "I'm sorry, Jeremy." I don't know if he could hear me, but for the first time in years, I let the silence stay after, and I didn't try to explain it away. We had the film developed by a specialist at Rutgers, someone who'd worked with degraded negatives before. The roll had survived 3.5 decades sealed inside a plastic canister buried behind insulation and drywall. The emulsion was patchy in places. Frame edges curled like they'd started to dissolve, but enough remained. 4 photographs. Each one changed the case. I brought them into the viewing room personally. We had Leah Burnett come in alone. No press, no uniformed officers, no Sam. She sat across from the monitor with a cup of coffee she never touched. Her hands didn't shake, but she kept them close together on the table. I asked if she was ready. She nodded. The first image came up a boy, Jeremy, sitting cross-legged in the corner of a basement. Light catching the side of his face. A juice box in one hand, a crayon in the other. Unfinished drywall behind him. Pink insulation sagging at the seams. He was smiling. Leah stared for a long time. Then she pressed her lips together and said, "He didn't know." We moved to the second photo. Same boy, same spot. But this time, someone else was in frame, barely visible. Just the right half of an adolescent body. Gray t-shirt, loose jeans. The figure was standing, turned slightly inward like they were looking down at Jeremy. The boy hadn't moved, but the smile was gone. "Can we enhance this?" she asked. "We're trying," I told her. The image had already been processed through every filter we had. No facial match, no usable prints. But on the t-shirt, faint lettering, blocky white, showed up under contrast. STA, possibly part of a team name. Leia leaned forward. "I've seen that shirt before," she said. I waited. My cousin used to live on Ellington Avenue, back in '87. Her son had a friend, older kid, quiet always around. He wore that same shirt, gray with blocky white letters. I think it said Stafford Tigers. Some kind of summer league out of Camden. "Do you remember his name?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said it slowly, like she was hearing it again for the first time in years. Corey. Corey Treadwell. We already had the name on file from the neighborhood roster. He'd lived with an uncle just a few streets from the Hall House in 1987. 17 at the time. No arrest record. Moved to Pennsylvania in 1989. That same day, we got a hit property in Bucks County registered under his name. No listed phone number. No social media. But a valid driver's license renewed 2 years ago. Before we acted on the warrant, I went to see someone else. Thomas Hall Jeremy's father was listed as a missing contact for years. But a Medicare database flag led us to an assisted living facility in Trenton, room 214B. He'd been checked in under state guardianship early-onset dementia after a minor stroke. No visitors. The nurse said he didn't talk much. I brought the photo with me anyway. Inside, he looked smaller than I expected. Barely skin and bone, eyes cloudy but open. I sat beside him and placed the picture on the table. Jeremy smiling cross-legged, his gaze shifted. Locked on the image. "Mr. Hall," I said gently. "Do you recognize this boy?" He didn't answer. "I'm Detective Riley Mercer. We're investigating the disappearance of your son, Jeremy Hall. He was 6 years old when he went missing in 1987. We believe we found his remains." A tremble passed through his fingers. Barely noticeable. "Do you remember that summer?" I asked. "Do you remember what happened?" He whispered something I didn't catch. I leaned closer. He said he'd be quiet forever. I asked, "Who said that?" No response. Then slowly Mr. Hall looked toward the window. "It was just a game," he murmured. "Said he'd make it look like the boy ran off. Said he'd teach him a lesson for being a little brat." My pulse spiked. "Who said that?" I asked again. He looked at me just for a moment, and the clarity was sharp sudden. "The neighbor boy," he said. "The one who always watched. With the dead eyes. Corey Treadwell." He nodded. Then exhaled hard and went quiet. Outside, I told the nurse what he'd said. She asked if it was useful. "It's enough," I said. "He gave us enough." We didn't know it yet, but the biggest discovery hadn't been the wall. Or the photos. It was the tape we found behind the HVAC panel. A small recorder still intact. One of the techs recovered the audio and sent a digital file to my terminal. I played it late that night in the office door closed. The first few seconds were static. Then a boy's voice. "My name is Jeremy Hall. I'm 6. If you find this, I was here." I waited. I didn't scream. I stayed still. I stayed good. Silence. He said if I did everything right, I'd get to leave. He called it the promise, said I'd graduate, be part of his collection. That word again, collection. A few hours later, I got a call from Wexler. He'd been digging through his old case files. "I think I was wrong," he said. There was another case. Asbury Park, 1985. 7-year-old girl named Samantha Leary. Same pattern. Basement. No forced entry. Last seen with a teenager. We never made the connection. I asked if there was anything unusual in her belongings. He didn't hesitate. She wrote the words Project Promise on the back of her math homework, 2 days before she vanished. I turned back to the monitor and looked again at Jeremy's tape. Same phrase, same terminology. If this was a game, it had rules. If it was a system, it had structure. And Corey Treadwell wasn't improvising. He was following something. I played the second tape around 6:45 a.m., lights off, door locked. The audio had been cleaned up overnight, still warped, still scratchy, but clearer. Jeremy's voice came through quieter this time, less sure of himself. Day 4, I think. He brought me soup today. It was cold, but I ate it. He said I did a good job not talking when the other people came by upstairs. The room felt still. I could hear the hum of the monitor behind me. Jeremy kept going. He said, I'm part of a graduation group, that after I finish the promise, I'll live in a better place, somewhere no one can hurt me. I paused the recording and sat back. It was almost clinical the way he repeated the phrases. Graduation group. The promise. It wasn't something a 6-year-old made up on his own. I radioed the tech and asked if the third tape was ready. It was. This one opened with a different tone, shorter, sharper hisses like something had been recorded over, then a few seconds of silence. Then, he brought someone else today. Said her name was Sam. She's younger than me. I think she's scared. The boy's voice wavered. There was a faint sound behind him, could have been a cough or a sob. He said we'd take turns with the flashlight, that we had to earn it. Be still, be quiet. That's how the rules work. Then came another sound. A thump, maybe. Then metal. Then I heard him fixing the wall again. Hammer sounds. He's making it thicker. I stopped it there. Later that morning, I sat down with Wexler in the basement archive. He'd pulled 3 more cold cases, each involving children, each left unsolved. One was a boy named Kevin Maddox, age 5, Edison, New Jersey, vanished in 1983, last seen playing near his grandmother's basement steps. Another was Celia Huang, 8 years old, disappeared during a neighborhood cookout in 1989. Case marked accidental drowning body never recovered. Each file had similar phrasing, no forced entry child, known to be quiet, no clear struggle. 3 tapes, 1 more missing, I said. Wexler nodded. You think someone took it, or never left it behind? I told him. That same afternoon, I got the call from the field team. They'd opened a secondary crawl space, this one behind the HVAC panel in the Burnett's basement. Inside, they'd found 3 sketches, childlike drawings in crayon. One showed a tall figure with no face holding what looked like a leash. Another showed a view of the basement wall, from the inside. Underneath the drawings was a handwritten note. He said I was the project. That night I drove out to Edgewater. Harold Wexler's home sat low on a quiet cul-de-sac, kitchen light still on. When I stepped inside, he was already at the table, case files spread around him like cards in a losing hand. He slid a photo toward me. A girl, black and white print. Date 1985. Samantha Leary. She used the same phrase he said. Project Promise. 2 days before she disappeared. He didn't sound surprised. Just tired. I thought I missed something he said. But this wasn't just a kid acting out. There's a structure here. Someone was running something. That same word again. Structure. We went back through the file. The Leary girl had last been seen near a neighbor's garage sale. No signs of struggle. A boy had offered to help carry boxes. Vague description. No charges were ever filed. Wexler pointed at a sentence in the report he'd written 38 years ago. Child may have been lured into unfinished basement under false pretense. Sent dogs lost trail near interior crawl space. The house in question had been demolished in 1994. The boy unnamed never followed up on. Until now. I showed him the grid I'd been marking on my office map. 6 children, 7 years, all within an 80-mile corridor of Cherry Hill, each town just far enough apart to avoid overlap. This was a program I said. He didn't argue. The next morning, we searched public property records and found a cabin in Bucks County listed under Corey Treadwell's name. Purchased in 1996. No phone line, no known utilities, but tax payments were current. We sent a team out with a drone and a warrant request. While they were in transit, our forensic audio team flagged something new. The third tape after Jeremy's last line had a second voice. Not a child. Subject did not progress. End of recording. Calm. Male. Measured. We sent the clip to the DOJ and ran it against archived psychiatric and correctional recordings. A match came back within hours. A psychiatric transcript from 1992 tied to a juvenile evaluation at a state facility in Camden. The name, Corey Treadwell. Back then, he'd been flagged as intellectually disorganized but nonviolent. He spent 8 weeks in a treatment program, then aged out of oversight. No follow-up, no restrictions. He'd simply disappeared. Until now. The cabin came back empty, but in the basement under a handmade hatch they found a pit, reinforced with plywood, braced with brick, and lining the wall photographs, Samantha Leary, Kevin Maddox, Jeremy Hall, Celia Huang, Milo Davis, Amara Collins. All children, all real, all documented missing. Under the photos, a locked cabinet. Inside, cassette tapes, clothing fragments, a folder labeled Transition Protocols. On a crude desk in the center of the room sat one final tape, handwritten in red ink, tape 4. We brought it back to the lab, and when I played it, Jeremy's voice came back, barely more than a whisper now. I think I made it to phase 3. If I finish this one, I get to see the sky again. Someone was here before me. She didn't finish. I think she got taken away. Then softer. If anyone finds this, don't believe him. Don't believe in the promise. Silence. Then a second voice. Subject did not progress. End of recording. I turned off the monitor. There was still one tape missing, but the pieces were starting to connect. The cabin was quiet when we reached it. Tucked back off a gravel path in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, it looked more like an old hunting retreat than anything connected to what we were chasing. Weathered wood siding. No mailbox. One broken window patched with cardboard. We had the warrant. DOJ had confirmed the voice match from the tapes. The timeline held. The name held. Corey Treadwell was real and alive. We moved in at first light. The tactical unit cleared each room with methodical silence. Empty kitchen. Empty den. Some old blankets piled in a corner, a rusted tin of soup on the counter. But no sign of him. Not until we found the hatch. It was hidden under a rug, just a slight unevenness in the floorboards that made me pause. When we pulled it back, the smell hit first. Mold, old wood rust, and something else. The trapdoor was handmade, chain-latched, braced from underneath. We broke it open. The space below wasn't finished, not technically. Dirt floor, brick-lined walls. A battery-operated lantern cast the room in this sick yellow glow. At first, it looked like another crawl space, until we saw the photos. Taped in 2 rows, labeled by hand in black marker, Samantha Leary. Subject A, Kevin Maddox. Subject B, Jeremy Holt. Subject C. There were more. 4 others we hadn't even identified yet. Each name matched a missing child. All from the same 50-mile radius. All taken between 1983 and 1992. Below the photographs was a locked cabinet. We forced it open. Inside, vials. Scraps of clothing, broken toys, cassette tapes. Dozens of them. Each labeled. Some in code, some with initials. One folder, water-stained but intact, was marked Transition Protocols. I didn't open it right away. I couldn't. Not yet. At the center of the room was a desk. Crude, nails sticking out. On it, a single cassette sat alone. Tape 4. Back at the station, we played it in the audio lab. Jeremy's voice was quieter than before, slower. "I think I made it to phase 3, he said. "If I finish this one, I get to see the sky again." There was a pause. "Someone was here before me. She didn't finish. I think she got taken away." Then the whisper, "If anyone finds this, don't believe him. Don't believe in the promise." Silence followed. Then a second voice entered. Not Jeremy's. Older, calm. Subject did not progress. End of recording. We didn't talk for a few minutes after that. I remember sitting there and the dark screen still lit and just listening to the hum in the speakers. 2 days later, we found Treadwell. He was staying at a shuttered roadside motel north of the state line. No internet, no phone, just a burner bag, some old maps, and a single handwritten note left on the floor. It said, "You found one wall, but I built more." Jeremy's funeral was held that same week on October 31st. Same date his mother had filed the missing persons report 36 years earlier. His father, Ben Holt, stood by the grave with a small box in his hands. Inside were the items we'd recovered: a plastic sheriff's badge, a cracked blue marble, a harmonica. He placed the marble on the headstone. Didn't say much. Just stood there in the leaves, whispering something I didn't catch. Later, I sat alone in a dark room at the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit. We were reviewing satellite data mapping the land around the cabin. 3 more excavation sites had been flagged. The depths were consistent. The spacing was deliberate. Too straight to be natural. I kept thinking about the photos, the folders, the labels, and the voice on the tape, the one that said subject, the one that said end of recording. We had our man. But something in me knew we didn't have all of them. The excavations began on November 3rd. Bucks County Search and Recovery brought in cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and a forensics team from the state. We had 3 flagged sites, each marked in a near-perfect triangle around the cabin. The soil was dry but dense, untouched for decades. I stood there most of the morning, coat zipped tight, radio clipped silent at my side. Every time a shovel struck the ground, I thought about the names on that wall. The first site revealed a wooden box, handmade, rotted at the corners. Inside were remains consistent with a small child. No ID, just fragments of fabric and what looked like a school pendant. Subject D, we believed. 2 days later, they found another, smaller, with a pair of black sneakers tucked beside the bones. The state released an official statement the following week. 5 confirmed child victims. 2 matched DNA to cold cases Kevin Maddox and Celia Huang. The others were still undergoing testing. Each had been buried the same way, face-down arms, at sides layered under compacted clay. It was intentional, precise, like someone followed a manual. Treadwell remained in federal custody during all of it. No confession, no reaction. His public defender cited diminished capacity, claimed his client had been exploited by others, said the real orchestrator had vanished long ago. But we had no evidence of that. No names, no witness, no mention of anyone else on the tapes. Just Treadwell's voice, clear and calm, ending each recording the same way. Subject did not progress. End of recording. That phrase became a kind of marker in the media. The press picked it up, turned it into headlines. Some called it a cult. Others called it a one-man operation. But what I kept thinking about were the records we couldn't get juvenile psychiatric reports from the mid-'80s that were sealed or lost. Facilities that had since shut down. Personnel that had retired or passed. There was a hole in the history, and Treadwell had lived inside it. On November 10th, we held a press briefing. I stood next to the FBI liaison while they named the children who had been identified. Behind us, their photos were mounted in a quiet line: Kevin, Celia, Jeremy. No fanfare, just names, dates, faces no older than 8. When it ended, I stayed behind. Packed the photos myself. Jeremy's was last. That night, I returned to the Burnett's basement. The crime scene tape had been removed. The air was colder now. I stood by the wall Sam had broken open weeks earlier. The hollow cavity behind it was still exposed, cleaned out, sanitized. But the silence was the same. I don't know what I expected. Closure, maybe. But there's no such thing when the victims never got to grow up. We issued a final search on a storage unit rented in Treadwell's name in Trenton. Inside was more of the same folders, schematics, even what looked like lesson plans. Labeled behavioral conditioning, transition units. Most of it was hand-drawn, pages yellowed with time. But one thing stood out: a list of initials. 12 sets. We'd only identified 7 victims. That meant 5 more were never found. The DOJ escalated the case to a federal task force. The plan was to cross-check every child reported missing between 1981 and 1994 in a tri-state radius. They called it Operation Hollow Echo. The Burnetts moved out in early December. I spoke with Laya before they left. She didn't say much, just handed me the red marble she'd found in the ductwork during the first week of renovations. "It doesn't belong to me," she said. I took it. Treadwell's trial is scheduled for March of next year. He's facing 5 counts of felony murder, unlawful restraint, and abuse of a corpse. No plea has been entered. But for some of us, the verdict won't matter. Not really. Because what we found in that basement, that wasn't just a crime scene. It was a blueprint. And I still don't know who else helped draw it. I still drive past that house sometimes. Colonial Court. The brick siding's the same. The front porch light's been replaced. There's a new family living there now, a young couple with a baby, I think. They put out Halloween decorations this year. A little scarecrow and a foam tombstone by the steps. Most people wouldn't notice anything unusual, but I do. I remember standing in that basement the night we closed the case. Just me and the wall. The space behind it had been filled in, sealed for good. But it wasn't quiet. Not really. When you've heard what I've heard, those tapes, those voices, you learn the silence isn't empty. It carries things. The final excavation turned up one more child. A girl. Still unnamed. The team labeled her Jane Echo until we get an ID. She was buried farther out than the others. Same method, same pattern. That made 6 confirmed. There may be more. Treadwell was convicted on all counts. Life without parole. He never spoke during the trial. Not once. Just stared forward while parents testified, while the tapes were played, while names were read aloud. I don't know what he believed. I don't know if it matters. But I think about the families, the ones who got answers, and the ones who never did. I keep a copy of Jeremy Holt's missing poster in my desk drawer. His father mailed it to me after the sentencing, folded with care. On the back, he'd written, "Thank you for bringing him home." That word home, it doesn't always mean safe. Sometimes it just means final. Laya and Sam moved across state lines after the trial. I heard they had a daughter in the spring. They named her Grace. When I saw the birth announcement, I thought about that red marble. It's still in my pocket every time I'm out on a scene. A reminder that some things survive in silence. Small, fragile, overlooked, but real. People ask if I believe there were others, other homes, other basements. I don't answer anymore. Because what matters isn't what we suspect. It's what we uncover, what we choose to bring into the light. Jeremy was 6 years old when he vanished. He would have been 42 last month. I try to imagine who he might have been. A teacher, a parent, someone who helped fix things that broke. Instead, what we have are fragments, a harmonica, a shoelace. a child's voice captured on magnetic tape whispering through decades of concrete. That's what stayed with me. Not the crimes, not the trial, but the voices, the unfinished sentences, the rooms that were never supposed to be opened. If this story stayed with you, consider sharing it, so no name gets left behind. Not this time.